All right, guys, it is that time, so if you can start making your way over to your seats, we're going to get started with our worship service. We are starting with our series on faith and politics today, so very exciting, lighthearted stuff. I'm very excited for it. I'm going to read our welcome statement, then we're going to get started in a time of worship together. Our progressive community at MissionGathering Christian Church welcomes you. If scandal, politics, and hate have led you into doubt, and you're curious about why doubt and faith seem so interlinked, if you grew up in the church and have lost your faith, or are in a moment of deconstruction or reconstruction, or if you're simply just curious about this community, welcome home. This church is not about trying to fix you. It's not about erasing your doubts or experiences. Both are holy and sacred. All of us have doubts, and all of us are on journeys with similar paths. We don't think you should have to journey through it alone. So whatever race, whatever gender identity, whatever sexual orientation, whatever disability or ability, whatever religion, whatever political party or lack thereof, and whatever your experiences have been, we join together on this journey to share one table filled with the tensions of faith and doubt. Welcome one and all. Welcome to Mission Gathering. Welcome home. Let's stand and worship together.
Chain will break as broken hearts declare his praise. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before him. Oh, oh, oh. So open up the gates, make way before the King of Kings. God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before him. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? 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 Who can stop the Lord? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before Scripture on your heart for when you need it. 'Cause anxiety hates Psalm 23. So just say it to yourself, do you believe it? And I'm feeling like I'm needing it right now. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me by still waters, till my fears are gone. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, oh, I know you are with me, my Father, my friend. Your goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. I know by your still waters I'm safe. Lord, I believe you can set me at ease. Turn this broken piece of me to peace and quiet. I know there's power in your word, so I'll sing it over and over till my soul's reminded that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me by still waters, till my fears are gone. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I know you are with me, my Father, my friend. Your goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. I know by your still waters I'm safe. Still waters run through any valley I can find. I'm laying fear down here at heaven's riverside. Your word has been true in every season of my life. I believe, yes, I believe. Still waters run through any valley I can find. I lay in fear down here at heaven's riverside. Your word has been true in every season of my life. I believe, yes, I believe that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me by still waters, till my fears are gone. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, oh, I know you are with me, my Father, my friend. Your goodness and mercy will follow me all of my days. I know by your still waters I'm safe. I know by your still waters I'm safe.
Thank you. You guys may be seated at this time. Just a few announcements before we continue in our worship together. The first is our Connect card. If you are newer to Mission Gathering, I invite you to scan this and to fill it out. It essentially just allows you to connect on our newsletter, which comes out weekly, so you can stay up to date on everything that's going on, as well as it usually sends me an email, so that way I can reach out and connect with you, whether it's a phone call, Zoom call, lunch, breakfast, just kind of get to know you and your story a little bit more. And then secondly, we are a nonprofit organization, so we thrive on donations. In the back there is a spot to drop cash or checks, but then there's also all the different QR codes. If you wish to give digitally, you just take out your phone, scan that, and then it'll pop up either Venmo, Tithely, or Zelle. And then our blessing bags. We have in the back on your way out just just shelves there filled with blessing bags. What blessing bags are is it's just different essentials for those who are unhoused. So if you ever see someone you can give them out. And so I would encourage you, grab one or two, keep them in your car, and then that way you can give them out whenever you see someone who needs it. And on that note of those who are unhoused, we have something called Welcome Saturday. We partner with Mesa Christian Church. It's our sister church, another disciples church here in town. And once a month, they have something called Welcome Saturday, where we serve food, drinks, there's showers, there's clothes, just a lot of different things that are just very, very helpful for those who are unhoused. And many churches in town do this, but that's something that's very helpful that we participate in once a month. So if you would like to volunteer, let me know, and that's something that you can connect with once a month. Lastly, there is our Los Angelitos, Tijuana trip that we do once a month, the third Saturday of each month. If that's something that you would like to participate in, definitely talk to me or Terry or Helen, and that's something that you can connect with, and it's absolutely just an amazing time. I've been several times, and I absolutely love it. Just these kids are such a blessing, and it's just really cool to be a part of their lives in this way, to connect once a month and to really pour into that relationship and their lives. And lastly, MG Kids, those of you who are kids in the back, you guys are welcome to, yes, Rugby Day.
I'm sorry, MG Rugby Day.
Yes.
I'm a little less organized than I would like to have been.
No, you're good.
We still have 5 spots.
5 spots for those of you watching online, MG Rugby Day.
Yeah, and so we have it's a live professional rugby at the University of San Diego. We'll have a tailgate at noon. Kickoff time is at 2 p.m. If you'd like to bring something to share for the party, that's great, but don't feel like you have to. But we'll put that out there in the email, and then whatever we don't have for the tailgate party, Matt and I will.
Yes, thank you so much for jumping in with all that. And then yeah, those kids, you guys can start heading on back to MG Kids. Deb and Barry are back there for you. And then last but not least, we have Pass the Peace. It's a time just to greet one another, to spend some time talking and connecting in the middle of service before we continue in the sermon. So may the peace of God be with you. All right. As you're ready, you can make your way to your seats. We'll get started with the sermon for this morning. So today we are starting a new series. It's going to go for about 4 or 5 weeks here on faith and politics. So that should be very fun. Richard, could you do the next slide there? That way I can see it in the back. On that note, I really want to kind of say what we always say here, that Mission Gathering sermons are meant to start discussions, not end them. I think that's very important to say leading into a discussion on faith and politics, because not all of us will agree naturally. But what I want to do is engage with the scriptures on what it says about some of these topics that we're really wrestling through as a society, and hopefully that'll be very beneficial to engage in these conversations together. But on that note, when I first mentioned the idea of a faith and politics series, a couple people asked a pretty fair question, which is why? why have a series on faith and politics? Like, aren't we already divided enough as a society to really engage in this in church? And kind of the status quo is, well, don't talk about religion and politics together. Those should remain separate. But the fact of the matter is, I think for better or for worse, politics is a huge part of our lives. So our faith should inform us to some extent how we can be more loving people in this part of our lives. And so that's what I want to do, is really engage with what the scriptures say about some of these topics. And to do that, we're going to start in the book of Daniel. Because the book of Daniel, it's long been read as wisdom literature to really reflect upon how spiritual people can engage with politics. And so I'm going to give a little bit of just the context of the book of Daniel, and then we'll kind of dive into it, one particular story in Daniel chapter 3, and we'll just have a good time together. I'm looking forward to it. But one thing just to kind of say up front, on our website, it usually says I preach from like 15 to 25 minutes. I very rarely preach 25 minutes, but today might be one of those days. So just hang with me for the extra 10 minutes here that we'll have. So the context of the book of Daniel. The context of the book of Daniel is really set in Babylon. So there's this period within Jewish history, about 50 years, where Jerusalem was overtaken and destroyed and under siege, and the Jewish people were taken captive by the Babylonians, and for about 50 years lived in exile in Babylon. And Babylon was something that, so naturally just the Jewish people grew to really dislike Babylon. And so in the Bible, Babylon is not just a city or a nation state, but really it becomes an archetype. It becomes an archetype for everything that is counterintuitive to the ways of God. So for example, you'll see in this picture, it's a very famous story, the Tower of Babel. We translate it Babel just because it sounds like babbling, but it was the Tower of Babylon. It represented everything that was counterintuitive to the ways of God. And so within the Bible, it's the total archetype of everything that's against God. And so with that being said, there are these stories of really reflecting upon, as they're in Babylon, this city that they believe to be absolutely evil, of, well, how do we live for these 50 years that it ended up being, of how do they, as spiritual people, of wanting to follow the Hebrew God in the midst of Babylon, in the midst of just the pantheon of other gods, and just the way in which they lived that they believed was against how they wanted to live. And so the book of Jeremiah kind of outlines a little bit of this for us. The prophet Jeremiah says, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce, marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." And so it seems very strange that in this place in which they absolutely hate, in which they believe is counterintuitive to their ways as Jewish people, that the invitation is actually seek the peace and prosperity of Babylon, to actually seek to make it better. And so I think as we reflect on politics and living in America, I think first and foremost, this idea that we are to seek the good of our city and our nation, but at certain points there will be ways in which our spirituality conflicts with the agendas of the majority. And so as we reflect upon how do we live in the United States and how do we live spiritual lives in which there are ways in which any kingdom of this world has ways in which it is like Babylon, as well as ways in which it is like the kingdom of God. There are many beautiful things about San Diego. There are many beautiful things about California. There are many beautiful things about America. But there are also some difficult things about just the culture in which we live and how do we engage with this. And so that's what the book of Daniel is all about, of how do you live in an empire, how do you live in a military superpower, and how do you live a spiritual life in a way in which seeks the good of the city and the state and the nation in which you live, but also recognizes the complexities of all of that as well. And so in Daniel chapter 3, there's this very interesting story that has been very made popular by VeggieTales. VeggieTales tells this story in a very different way. They're like in like this chocolate factory and all that stuff, but I'm just going to focus on the actual story here. But you've probably heard this, whether you watch VeggieTales or not, you've probably heard this story. King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, it starts off with, in chapter 3, saying King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. Cubits was just like a general way of measuring. It was generally seen as like from the wrist to the end of the forearm. And so 60 cubits, it's a pretty high statue. It's a very big image that he has set up here. And it says, and set it upon the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. The plain of Dura was right outside the city. It was this giant area, absolutely open. And so it's this idea that it's laid on display for everyone to see within the province of Babylon. And that idea that King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, that is very important because gold really represented Babylon. Babylon was one of the richest nations in the world at the time, if not the richest nation in the world. And so it became really this representation to see gold as pointing to Babylon and representing them. But also in the previous chapter, they were essentially told not to set up an image of gold, and yet they continue to do it. And so Nebuchadnezzar, he's setting up an image here that really represents Babylon. And the instructions follow in verse 4. It says, the herald loudly proclaimed, nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, they really go into detail here about the music here, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace, which sounds very excessive. It's not just you'll be shunned, you'll be kind of just like mistreated, but you will be full on thrown into a furnace. And so many of us ask the question, well, why so over the top? Why would they throw someone into a furnace over this, over just not worshiping this golden image that's set up? And oftentimes this is really laid in a very spiritual light, a very religious light of, oh, the God of Hebrew Scriptures versus the gods of Babylon. But frankly, this is not about religious and spiritual devotion. And we can see this in the fact that it says nations and peoples of every language. This is about national loyalty. That worshiping the golden image, gold represented Babylon, this is giving total allegiance to Babylon. And so this is about national loyalty. This is about whether you will submit to the will of your nation and have that be your ultimate allegiance, or will your ultimate allegiance lie elsewhere? And the story goes on to say, at this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. And so this is about national loyalty. And so naturally, when you make things about nationalism, there will be people who are labeled as national outsiders, and they will be made the first targets of nationalistic agendas. And so the fact of the matter is the Jews had been taken captive. They were seen as outsiders. They were seen as potential people who could be rebels and participate in an uprising. And so they become really the first targets of all of this. And so they say, the astrologers to the king, there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. These three main characters kind of become the focus of the book of Daniel: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it says, they pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. And so notice these are pictured as two different things: worship of the gods and worshiping the golden image. And so one is about, yes, religious devotion, spiritual devotion, but the other is about national loyalty, of which will you give your ultimate allegiance to. And I use that word allegiance very carefully, but also very intentionally, because we also talk about allegiance here in the United States, right? Growing up, there was something that we did every single day. It was called the Pledge of Allegiance, where you would stand up and you would pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And so this was something where you were pledging your ultimate devotion or loyalty to a person, group, or cause. This is just a straight dictionary definition of what it means to have allegiance to something. And I bring this up intentionally to kind of just ask the question, because there have been times where people maybe don't stand up, or maybe they take a knee. And I would just ask the question of, how does that make you feel if you have seen some Americans react when people don't engage with the American flag in the expected manner? And I'm not saying this is the exact same thing of pledging allegiance versus of bowing down to the statue, but I believe it's a helpful comparison, because if you were someone who got upset when someone like Colin Kaepernick took a knee in the midst of the American flag, that's a helpful litmus test to whether or not you have just streams of nationalism in you, of whether perhaps you have idolized your nation in ways that is unhealthy. And so, like I said, the command of the scriptures is to seek to make your nation better, but not to idolize your nation. Daniel and his friends, the main characters of this book, they wanted to make Babylon better, but their ultimate allegiance wasn't to Babylon. And I think in the same way, we should want to make America better, but our ultimate allegiance isn't to America. We have a higher allegiance to the whole world, to God, to the kingdom of heaven. This is really the idea of the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, that we're called to seek the kingdom of God here on earth. And to do that, you can't really be a nationalist. You can have some sort of patriotism and love for your nation, of wanting to make it better, but to have full allegiance where you just engage in nationalism, that is anti-Christ. That is against the way of the scriptures. And so the story goes that the astrologers, they report to the king that these Jews, they neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you've set up. And once again, those are two different things: the worship of gods and ultimate allegiance to the nation state. And so here in America, scholars actually consider this a whole separate category when they study religion. It's called American civil religion. That there are ways in which idolization of America kind of becomes its own religion. And this becomes most clear in many Christian churches that have what is, when I grew up, my church and many other churches around town had what was called a patriotic worship service.